It's Sicko Satchel Day. We got a bunch of sick questions in this one. We're past the trade deadline, yet still, we have people asking about possible trades once we get to the offseason. And what are the Hornets' goals for the rest of the year? How do we view this team? That's all today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. There's a Dancing Doug Branson. EveryHornetsBoxScore.com is the Substack. You can also find his text information there. You can send your Sicko Satchel questions there on EveryHornetsBoxScore.com and the text messages. You could do it to Locked On NBA. I'd be interested to see if Matt Moore and Hayes would be down with the Sicko Satchel gig. I don't know why you wouldn't be, but I also don't want you to steal our content and use it for a different show. But either way, you're doing good content over there on Locked On NBA as well.
Well, why? Thank you, and I'll send a compliment back your way. We are in hair sync right now. We both shortened up the do. I'm loving it right now. And I will say on the NBA thing, you can be a sicko of the Hornets and a sicko of the NBA. Certainly, you can comment on our YouTube videos. That's what we're pushing people to do right now. That's where you can, because I want to read some of those later in the week on Locked On NBA. So if you're checking that out, comments, and I will, particularly if I remember your user handle from Locked On Hornets, I will prioritize you. So there's some incentive.
A little self-conscious about my hair right now. I don't love my haircut. Let me try to style it real quickly.
No, show my guy Walker great. Some love. Not Actually, great. Someone did show you some love. Let me pull. You keep going. I'm going to pull this text message up.
Okay. Yes, I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. While Doug looks up the comment, I'll tell you that this episode isn't brought to you by anything today, but we do have a newsletter. It's the Locked On Hornets Daily Newsletter, your one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox if you sign up. But you can sign up for free right now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Hornets newsletter. Doug is also taking care of that. All right, what's the comment?
This is a comment from YouTube from @CarlosOrtega626 a couple of days ago. The comment is this. I thought by why did I do that? Walker. I thought by Walker's voice, he was a...
I take enough L's. No need to pronounce this one in my name.
I added like 16 L's to that. Walker. I thought by Walker's voice, he was a 50-year-old large man. Ladies, leave your man at home. Why Walker isn't working sidelines at Hornets games, who knows?
Thank you, Carlos. Shannon Spake does an excellent job. I do not want her job. I do not want her to take her job. But I do appreciate all of the kind words. Shout out to Carlos, man. Big time shout out to Carlos. Ladies, leave your man at home. Yeah. They can come out. They're fine. I promise you. They're totally fine. All right, let's get to the first Sicko Satchel question of the day. Again, this is your bag here, Doug. Nay, this is your satchel. What's the first question you want to ask?
This is from Hallie of the 12th Book Night Division. Actually, Hallie is keeping a running Notes app note with several questions, so you're going to hear from Hallie probably multiple times this week. I've read all of them. They're all excellent. I picked the best of the bunch.
Welcome.
And this is... Paul George to the Hornets feels more possible than ever. Should the Hornets go for it this offseason? Excellent. See, this is really embracing the idea of the Sicko Satchel, the philosophy behind the Sicko Satchel, which is that to love the Hornets is to have a little bit of a mental illness. Because it's all evidence to the contrary that this team is going to improve, and yet we have questions like this that suggest Paul George to the Hornets.
Okay, so Doug, I know you've been talking about the situation. I don't know if there's anything I've been missing here, but it seems like from what I have been watching is that Paul George is clearly not playing his best basketball. He's averaging 16 points per game. It is the lowest point per game total that he has put together in a full season since second year in the league playing for Indiana. So it's not going well. The percentages aren't great either. I saw that did he have a goose egg like within the last week or 2 weeks?
Points. 2 points in a game which he played like 35 minutes, and a game that they lost. Kelly Oubre scored 30 plus in that game, former Charlotte Hornets.
He's going to put the shots up. And Kelly, you don't got it, Paul? I got it. Watch me go to work. So do the Hornets want to take this guy on after clearly having a disappointing pre-All-Star break portion of the season? And then if you look at the 76ers salary cap or their payroll, he's making what? $45 million for the next
he's a $200+ million man right now.
Look, like I get it with Brandon Miller. I guess my question is, are we at the point where you want to do everything you can to make Brandon Miller happy? 1, 2, he's going to come in and play a position that might just be available via your first round pick if you do get Cooper Flagg at number 1. If you do get Ace Bailey at number 2, 3, 4. So, look, it's just too much money for me for somebody that's clearly on the decline. This doesn't feel like the move, right? I'm not sure that this feels like the move to make this offseason, which when you're bringing somebody in that makes over 40 a year, he would be the most expensive player on the roster. Is he more expensive than LaMelo? Would be right there with LaMelo. So that would be my point. It's not something I'm interested in, but I get the question in terms of like, it's not working out with Philly. This is a star. He would come help you defensively. He would help you. I still think maybe, I'm not sure the defensive level that he's playing with Philly this year. Spot up threes. You think he would still help you there so he could help with the shooting. I'm still just not interested, certainly at that price point.
He would be significantly more expensive than would be LaMelo Ball. LaMelo's at like 35. Paul George is at 49 this season, and then 51, then 54, then a player option in 27, 28, and 56. And now you're getting around the time in which they would have to pay Brandon Miller money. And would Brandon Miller be happy with a Paul George acquisition? Certainly, Paul George is Brandon Miller's GOAT, is his greatest of all time, the player that he watched, the player that he grew up emulating. But do you want that player on your team? They seem to have a good rapport when Brandon Miller went on Paul George's podcast. They were yucking it up. But would he want Paul George sucking up all of the shot attempts and all of the things that would go towards Brandon Miller? Because again, when you're paying Paul George that much money for the next couple of seasons, you're going to want that guy to put shots up. It's what's frustrating fans of the Philadelphia 76ers right now is that not only is he not making a lot of shots at the rim inside the two-point arc because he is knocking down his threes this season, but he's not being very aggressive offensively. You mentioned the 16 points per game. He's just rarely getting over 20 points per game on a team in Philadelphia that like is losing a lot and they need him because Tyrese Maxey has been hurt, because Joel Embiid has been completely on and off the floor.
And even McCain being out, who was a big production guy for them too at the beginning of the year, he was out.
Exactly.
Early,
so a lot of their offense is in and out of the lineup. And so Paul George, but here's the deal though. Paul George also dealing with injuries, particularly to his pinky finger. I believe it's on his shooting hand. And he is getting injections on that finger already in the regular season. I was reading some reporting, and someone commented that like that's something that typically happens when you get to playoff time. Like you've put a lot of wear and tear on it in the regular season. There are things that we don't want to talk about that training staffs do to make sure that everybody can play in the postseason. And he's already having that done in the regular season. So that's not a great sign, but I don't think it would be a long-term issue. I think he just needs to get healthy in an offseason. And certainly you would think that Paul George would come back motivated next season, whether he's playing with Philadelphia or he gets traded to another team. Maybe it's the Charlotte Hornets. He's going to come back and be motivated to play because it has been difficult for Paul George to adjust to figure out what the role was going to be with Philadelphia because he knew he was going to have to be a little bit of a third wheel to Maxey and Embiid. And then playing with Embiid has been difficult for Paul George. He's admitted as much that like figuring out what that's supposed to be, when he's supposed to take over, when someone else is supposed to take over. He's never played with a big like Joel Embiid before. That would be completely different if he came over to Charlotte, where I think it would be much easier to acclimate to playing with Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball. And I think he would almost, because of his veteran status, he would almost be like immediately like, no, you're the go-to guy. There's no question here.
Yeah. So if you have Brandon Miller on your roster and he's supposed to be growing into a Paul George type player, you would have not quite Paul George, but on the ascent. And you would also have not quite Paul George on the descent. So you would have the guys that aren't
Maybe
quite.
They meet in the middle. They forge like a Voltron, and they get like one sits on the other one's shoulder, and they become a full Paul George.
That's right. So do you just not pay the over $40 million a year going into the 50 to hopefully get Brandon Miller's Paul George-like status on the roster in the next 2 years and just not pay the guy that's going to be 35 by the time you trade for him, because he's going to turn 35 in May, and so he'll be 35 years old once you trade for him this offseason. But yes, I understand there are ways that would work, but you talk about it, the trade would also be what? Miles Bridges, that would be halfway getting to the salary. So now you're giving up Mark Williams. I don't, is that something that would happen? I'm not sure. You still need to add money.
Doing that anyway.
I know. You still got to add money to it. I don't think you're giving up any picks in this scenario. Like maybe you are. I guess you are giving up some picks. It's hard for me to the old guys that still have something clearly left in the tank. It's always hard to gauge their value. Like, wait, who's all the money? 35 years old, like who's supposed to be giving up the picks? Am I taking his contract on? Or
it would be the Hornets giving up maybe a pick or two, because let's game this out, right? So Philadelphia gets to the offseason, they're like, none of this is working. We got to figure out a way to just completely reset. Who do we reset around? Well, I think we'd obviously want to reset around the young guy who is relatively healthy in Tyrese Maxey. So we see if we can deal one of Paul George or Joel Embiid. They both have huge contracts. It's going to be a difficult deal to get done. There would probably be multiple teams involved. I don't think that Charlotte would have to gather up all of the contracts and push it through. This would be a multi-team deal. And so the Hornets, would they give up Miles Bridges and 3 picks? Would they give up LaMelo Ball and maybe 1 or 2 picks? But I think they would have to give up something, but they wouldn't have to give up the mother load to move Paul George, because it's a completely different situation, because Paul George would be coming off of this year. I think it's a fun idea. I think it would be misaligned with everything we've heard from the Hornets so far. It would be like a huge move in a dangerous situation, one in which if they wanted a player of Paul George's ilk, they would kind of have to make. Like, you're not going to be able to trade for Paul George at his peak. You're going to have to trade for, like the Toronto Raptors did, like a Kawhi Leonard with major question marks, and hope that it all works out. Is that the kind of dice roll they want to make? Nothing has indicated that, but also they haven't made the big move. So it's going to shock us when it happens. So, why not Paul George? Who knows?
I gave you my reasons as to why not, but I hear you. Paul George coming over, it'd be fun to see the star. I mean, hell, we've been trying to figure out if Russell Westbrook is going to be a Hornet. Maybe Paul George is now the old star that everybody just doesn't quite want. And you had something on Russell Westbrook before we go to break?
Well, just crazy different situation, but Russ has been contributing great for with Nikola Jokic.
Yes.
I mean, again, that's a way different situation when you have a Hall of Famer in Jokic, but he has contributed for Denver when everybody was like, boo, that move, that's stupid, what are they doing? And then, somebody was smart in that front office.
Somebody was. Yeah, nice job. All right, let's move on. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
We got a lot of Sicko Satchel questions, plus we'll ask, what do the Hornets have left to prove this season? That's still to come here, LOH. This episode is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. an expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. More Locked On Hornets ahead. What do the Hornets have left to prove? One, I would like for them to prove that Mark Williams still exists. I would like to see that is still a thing in the Hornets universe. But other than that, the goals that they would achieve, I think finishing on a high note is always something you ask for in post-All-Star break, second half of season type stuff with the bad teams, right? Can you end the season with some momentum so you have something to say during media days to start the next season, so you have something to say during exit days at the end of this current season? Hey, we really hit our stride the last month of the year. We really put something on tape that we liked. The young guys started playing a lot better. But short of that, short of the surface level stuff that I just talked about, Doug, what else do you think the Hornets have left to prove this year?
Yeah, proof of life for Mark Williams. And I think what's interesting now is when they do say something about the Mark Williams situation, what do they say? So they have to play February 19th against the Los Angeles Lakers. I haven't looked at the latest injury report if it's even been submitted for the Hornets, but I can't imagine that Mark Williams would play in that game of all games against the team that he was almost traded to. But they have to start answering some questions, one would think, about it in terms of, is this absence about the relationship between Mark Williams and the Charlotte Hornets? Is this absence related to the health concerns that may have been found on a Los Angeles Lakers physical? Did they find something that, again, the Hornets might not have been aware of, that the Lakers weren't aware of, that they said, I go back to the Sean Elliott thing where they found, I think it was like a kidney or something, where they found this thing on the physical where they were like, oh my God, there's this issue, and it bungled the trade, but it was like also like a serious life thing for Sean Elliott to figure out.
Well, Karis LeVert, now that you mention it, Karis LeVert, just because he got traded, had a really scary health issue going on, I believe. Was it cancer? And then it was only found because of the physical that he endured via the trade, which goes back to a point that Bobby Marks made. Maybe we haven't focused on that enough. It was just kind of in passing. But
cancer. It was kidney cancer, and he had to have surgery to remove the mass in 2020.
Unreal. Just one of those spooky moments where you don't find that unless he gets traded. And who knows? The Nets wouldn't have given him a physical, right, had they not traded him. And that goes back to Bobby's point when Wes was asking him on Wes and Walker, hey, do the Hornets have any, are the Hornets at fault here? Is their medical staff at fault because they didn't see anything with Mark that the Lakers did? And Bobby said, well, no, because he wouldn't have been subject to a physical for quite some time until you get traded, which is the last condition for every single one of these moves. So yeah, it's a good point, right? Because maybe here you are asking, did the Hornets miss something? Is it due to an injury that Mark suffered that the Hornets didn't know about? Is it something that Mark didn't know about? Like, is that now are we to a point where this thing does exist and it's not just quote unquote the Lakers getting cold feet if you buy into that sort of thing, which I do think that's a possibility, maybe a probability, but there still is the risk of there being an injury that he might have been playing through. Who knows, man? There's so many questions here with Mark still.
All right, what else do the Hornets have left to prove? I think, obviously, I would like to see the Hornets find some way to improve their offense. That's going to be easier if LaMelo Ball can shake this ankle soreness from his last sprain. That's going to make it easier on Charles Lee. But I would like to see the offense get out of the basement, like not finish dead last in the league, which is certainly where they've been over the last 10 games. I'd have to look at Cleaning the Glass to see where they are in the season, but I would bet that it's pretty close to the bottom. So can they raise that a few spots before the end of the season? Can we see some continued improvements from Nick Smith Jr.? Can Miles Bridges prove that he can shoot the basketball from outside to the level that he's done in previous seasons? So if you go back to 21-22, he shot 33% from the field on nearly 6 attempts. In 23-24 last season, he shot nearly 35% on 6.5 attempts. But this season, he's shooting 30% on a little over 6.5 attempts. And so, look, he's got a lot more responsibility, essentially playing with a lot of these young guys and so many injuries. He's been available. We've committed him for that. But I would like to see that shooting improve in the back half of this season or whatever's left of this season.
The other thing is, I already mentioned this, I touched on it, but the young guys, who shows up? So who has something left to prove? The Hornets, what do they have left to prove? What do the young guys have left to prove? Nick Smith Jr., KJ Simpson, who are going to be the real players that have the inside track to be a backup guard going into the next season? Is it NSJ, who's just a year ahead of KJ in terms of NBA experience? Or is it KJ, who's a little ahead in terms of overall basketball experience, having been an older player, being drafted by the Hornets, and then he really hits the ground running once he gets his feet wet in the NBA this past year? So who are the guards that show out, that are the younger guards that you might want to keep? Because not only do they have to compete against one another, but they have to compete with the idea of Trey Mann. They have to compete with Trey Mann coming back from injury. And is there anybody worth moving off of Trey for? Because that doesn't seem to be the deal right now, especially with what Trey showed you at the beginning of the year, the 13 games that he played. But yeah, the younger guards, I think they got something left to prove, and the Hornets got to figure out what they have there.
If Nurkic continues to play and plays more minutes and starts, can the Hornets what will Charles Lee do with a big that can shoot, with a pick and pop game that returns for the first time since Grant Williams tore his ACL? What does that do to the offense? I would like to see how that proves out over the remainder. One guy who I honestly don't think has anything left to prove is Tijon Salon. Like, I think he's proved that he's not completely sinking in the waters of the NBA, but he also, I think, needs an offseason to figure a lot of this stuff out. I mean, I think having him in the game is fun for Hornets fans to watch. It's also difficult for people who are familiar with how NBA basketball should be played. It can be difficult to watch him at times, but I don't think that he has much left to prove other than just to stay healthy and continue to soak up all of those opportunities to learn. But really, I don't think we're going to see drastic improvements from him until next season. And then finally, and probably the guy we should have started with, is LaMelo Ball. Can he prove that he can get that ankle healthy, that he can stay healthy, that he can even have like a minor tweak of that ankle and not have to miss the remainder of the game with ankle soreness? We're always looking for that to be proven with LaMelo Ball, and that won't change the rest of the way.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Last thing for me, just breaking this down in terms of what the Hornets are doing offensively. You mentioned, can they not finish dead last offensively? Yeah, I'll put details to that. Can they prove that they can hit shots at the rim as a team? Because they're dead last, according to Cleaning the Glass. They are ranked number 30. They are shooting 61.6% at the rim. Again, dead last with Cleaning the Glass, which gets rid of garbage time. And the other thing is, when it comes to their three-point shooting percentage, they're in what? I think they're ranked number 25, 26, something like that. Just be efficient at something offensively. I know it's tough. I know it's really hard, especially with the personnel that you have, with all the injuries, right? Like, if you're going to be a three-point shooting team, let's get close to average in terms of hitting three-point shots. If you're going to struggle from there, then create some easy looks for yourself at the basket. Let's not finish dead last at the basket, which is happening now. So can you prove that you're not dead last offensively, such as you suggested, or just prove that you're not dead last in some of the most important facets in hitting basketball shots? So that would be nice for the Hornets to prove.
Some context on the rim finishing numbers. So much of that is actually rooted at the three-point line because teams don't respect the Charlotte Hornets in terms of their shooting, and so they pack the paint. I mean, that's the reality of what the Hornets are looking at defensively. And they also, it's a two-pronged problem. The first prong is that they can't shoot, so teams pack the paint. The second part of the problem is that they don't have guards that are super great at drawing fouls. They don't have a lot of physical guard. Well, they do. Some of them are injured. But even a healthy Brandon Miller was not getting to the line a ton. LaMelo has been better this season, but he hasn't been healthy. Trey Mann was less about getting the line and more about finessing his way to a spot, and he was good at that. But NSJ, KJ's done an okay job, but some of these guards are just not very good at drawing fouls. And so, like, when you can't put pressure on the rim and you can't shoot, like, you're going to have a bad. It's not that they're like getting wide open layups and missing bunnies. It's that there's a foundational issue to that rim percentage number. But you're totally right. They have to. I don't know that they can prove that in the rest of this season, but they certainly have to address that come this offseason when they refigure this roster.
All right, more Sicko Satchel questions coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
We'll answer some questions from Davis of the 8th Bismack Brigade, Sean of the 5th Booknight Division, and possibly Hallie again of the 12th Dwight Howard Division. Those are sick divisions. That's still to come. Last segment. This episode is brought to you by Hungryroot. When it comes to grocery shopping and meal planning, you can have this ongoing problem. I know I've had the ongoing problem where you just don't have the time between work, life, and trying to eat healthier. I was constantly feeling stressed out. I'd go to the grocery store, buy things I didn't need, and then end up with no time to actually cook. And sticking to my health goals, that was a struggle too. This is where Hungryroot comes in. Everything changes with Hungryroot. Honestly, it's a game changer. It's the easiest way to eat healthy without all the stress. With Hungryroot, it's like having a personal shopper and a nutritionist all in one. They take care of your grocery shopping, recommend meals to you as well, and they recommend groceries based on your taste and your health goals, from anti-inflammatory to high protein, gluten-free options as well. The best part is every meal is ready in 15 minutes or less. I'm talking quick, healthy meals that actually taste great, all delivered straight to your door. It's been a huge time saver, and it makes for healthy eating, and it makes it so much simpler. All great things that Hungryroot provides. You're going to love Hungryroot as much as I do. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box and a free item in every box for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code LockedOnNBA to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code LockedOnNBA. Don't miss out. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Sicko Satchel time. What is the next question here, Doug Branson?
Sicko Satchel brought to you by the Sicko Brigade. Join subtext.com/Locked On Hornets. It's the official home of the Sicko Satchel, where you can submit your questions, your comments, your all-star thoughts. I prompted folks to send in all-star thoughts as well. And that's where we're going to start with someone who just recently joined the Sicko Brigade, but has been a member since almost our founding of this podcast. This is someone who's followed the podcast for a very long time. So shout out to J-Dog, who just recently signed up for the Sicko Brigade. And J-Dog asks, hopefully NBA realized that the talking trash to players on the PA was a poor idea at the All-Star game. The general disdain that the pundits like Shaq and Draymond seem to have is just a turnoff. I don't need a shill when it's bad, but I also don't need old man yelling at clouds. Maybe actually play more basketball next year. Way too much filler. Honestly, not sure if there is a fix to the game. It's never going to be a real game again, no matter how you tweak it, but I'm open to being wrong here.
Yeah, you had the strong all-star takes yesterday. You know, I was thinking more about the all-star game as well, and getting some of that stuff ready even more so for Wes and Walker. I think the hard part is Davis is right in the sense that it's hard to control, because what the NBA tried to do with this tournament format is manufacture effort. How could we get these guys playing harder, even if they don't want to, during an all-star break? So you test their pride. You bring these younger players in because Kevin Durant and company, they don't want to lose to the rising stars. They don't want to lose to Ryan Dunn, of all people, hitting some shots. And so, okay, we'll dispatch of them real quickly, or dispose of them real quickly, and then we can move on to the next round. So that's one way to manufacture it. But I think the real saver here, where we do see history repeat itself, we see these things go through cycles, is who are the guys that do care internally that just don't have to have any manufacturing of effort. That's where Wemby comes in, and it's why I think you can leave All-Star Weekend with some positivity. Like, who is the dog? Yes, I understand. It's a cliche, but who's got that dog in him? Wemby does. Even with the foolish throwing the shots up at the rim and the skills challenge thing, Skims, by the way, shout out to the sponsor. Even if it's just throwing out shots at the rim for a skills challenge, it comes from a competitive place, right? It's because he was trying to win. He wasn't acting too cool, taking 5 seconds to dribble around one of the cones. He's dribbling fast because he cares. He wants to win, and he's showing you real effort. You saw that kind of effort in the tournament format. Young star. The guy, Anthony Edwards, says the NBA is trying to make the face of the league. Seems like he's embracing it. You know who else showed a lot of effort? The guy who just might win MVP this year in SGA, who is another guy that showed a lot of effort. A younger player like Jalen Williams, who gets to his first All-Star appearance and tells you afterwards, I want to play more. It's going to have to be the guys that truly care internally, Doug. And for whatever reason, it didn't happen because LeBron hasn't taken this seriously. Fine. He played 20 straight All-Star appearances. I'm not even hating on him for it. It just is what it is. We've seen all these stars just not care as much. But the young guys, Doug, they seem to care, and that's what matters. So I think the tweaking of the game, you're right. I don't know what else you can do to tweak the games, but if you have them ones like you seem to right now, that's what's going to help the All-Star weekend going forward.
Yeah, hopefully we see a lot more Charles Lee kind of attitude where everything matters, and coming out of that Missoula tree, coming out of the Budenholzer tree, hopefully that kind of attitude then makes its way into some of the players' mentality as well. And you have more guys like Wemby and Kyrie who just they give a damn, and they're not afraid to give a damn. And so to me, the improvement of something from bad to good is always ugly at some point. And I think that's what we got here in this All-Star weekend is we got the ugliest point. We got the point when you decide, hey, I'm going to go to the gym and improve my body. And there's a point at which it starts to get ugly. Like your body gets tired, you're sweating profusely, and it's just not a pretty. So you look in the mirror, you go, man, I'm going to be where I want to be at some point, but right now it's not looking great. And I think that's what we saw. If anything, I'm given so much hope by this All-Star weekend, particularly on the presentation side, because there's no more TNT. It's going to go to someone else, fresh ideas, sort of the same idea that I had with the Charlotte Hornets. You've got some new ideas, maybe some younger people, some creative ideas. That's what the NBA needs. They need less stale Kevin Hart. They need less angry and mean Draymond Green. Shout out Rod Morrow, who's been on the show, who pointed out that when Chuck and Shaq and Kenny make fun of players, we kind of laugh a little bit because they have charisma, because they're funny about it. Even if we don't agree with them, we laugh at it. But when Draymond does it, it just sounds mean. It sounds weird. And so if anything, hopefully it just ended the idea of Draymond as a main fixture on a desk and Kevin Hart as a main fixture at the All-Star weekend, and we can just move to something new. I'm so much more hopeful about the future of All-Star weekend after what we saw this past weekend.
All right, let's get to another Sicko Satchel question. What else you got for us?
Sean of the 5th Book Night Division, we better get a top 3 pick, man. Top 5 I'll be happy with. I don't know if we can say we, quote, deserve the first pick, but it'd sure be nice.
This is just a text message you threw in here. I think you got it. You put it in the wrong part. This is just Sean venting to you. We got to get a top 3 pick. The
satchel can be anything. It doesn't need to be a question. It can be a place to vent all of your sickness.
And this is that from Sean of the 5th Book Night Division. I don't know if we can say we deserve the first pick, but it would sure be nice. Yeah,
we don't deserve it, but we've earned it. Have you seen what this franchise has been through? But the fan base, maybe the franchise doesn't deserve it. And maybe the franchise hasn't earned it because of some of the frugality that we've seen from Michael Jordan, the inaction, the cowardice that we've seen from some of the general managers that have come through, and some of the selfishness that we saw in Bob Johnson prior to that, the ineptitude and I don't even know the right words to put on George Shin.
You did a great job.
There's a lot of words you can use for old Georgie. But so the franchise doesn't deserve it. But man, I think this fan base does.
Fan base absolutely deserves it. And the fact that they'll show up if you give them something to pull for. So give them a top-notch player. The other thing is, on one hand, you could say the Hornets have hit on their most recent top draft picks and they haven't done anything with them. So maybe in that way they don't deserve it. But they've hit. They've made the right decision. So you can trust them just organizationally for choosing the right guy at the top of the draft. LaMelo Ball at number 3, Brandon Miller at number 2. So the Hornets they've shown you that they can get it right if they get a top 3 pick. Okay, let's go with another Sicko Satchel question before we end the day.
All right, I'm going to save Davis's. He wants to know about the free agent market. I want to do a little bit more research on that before we just take it off the dome there. But let's go with Evan. Are you cool with just embracing the tank? Also, if that is what is being used, do you find any validity in Cooper Flagg hinting at staying another year at Duke? So the question is Cooper Flagg hinting at staying at Duke because he sees the Hornets on the horizon?
Am I embracing the tank? Yes, I am, because we can prove that you could win some games and maybe gain some momentum, going into the offseason. But this is a team that's played, 52 games already this year. So you're talking about 30 games left to go. There's just not much time. 30 games left for the Hornets. I don't know. Are you looking for a, 8 and whatever record, 8-22? God, man, it's. I don't love embracing the tank. Right, I oftentimes find myself trying to figure out what matters more here: heart and putting some good tape on the court, and logic. And it's clearly good to have better odds to go after a Cooper Flagg. So I think I do end up going more towards the latter. If they win, I'm not going to be mad about it. I'm not going to be like, great, they're ruining the tank. That's not going to be me. But if you're asking what I'd rather have, I think now, yes, I would rather have better odds at getting Cooper Flagg at number 1 overall.
Evan, here's what I would say. No one in this fan base is embracing the tank. The tank has embraced us. The tank ran over us when Grant Williams tore his ACL, when Trey Mann, who looked like he was going to be a 6th Man of the Year candidate, had back issues that looked to keep him out for the entire season. The tank embraced us in that the tank ran over us. We all have tank track marks running up over our face at this point. And the Hornets have realized this. They're not talking about it because who talks about it? But they're not playing Seth Curry a lot of minutes. Some of the veterans that may be able to help you in a certain situation. No, you're going to play the young guys. You noticed in that last segment when we talked about things the Hornets have left to prove that neither Walker or I mentioned win a damn ball game, because that's not what's important right now. What's important is showing improvement. What is important is getting some of these young guys more experience and getting other players healthier. That's going to be the focus. So in that way, yes, you're embracing the tank. If they happen to win ball games, yay! But that's where we are right now, and that's how this show is going to operate. We're going to evaluate things based on improvement, not final result. Hopefully next season we can start looking at the final result.
To answer your second part of the question, whether there's any chance that Cooper Flagg goes back to Duke, I do not think so. I understand that in the NIL era, it's more possible than ever for these guys to go back to school because they're going to be making millions of dollars. But Cooper Flagg is going to be the number 1 overall pick. The number 1 overall pick will make $12.5 million his first year in the NBA. That goes all the way up to $17 million just 4 years afterwards. His evaluation in terms of NIL right now is 4.8. So you're talking about almost 3 times as much money you'd be getting going to your first year in the NBA. And Doug, with that being said, it's not even about your rookie contract, which is significantly more than what you'd be making in the NIL. It's all about getting to your second contract sooner, and it's all about getting to your third contract sooner, where now you're talking about possibly, if you deliver on the goods, 40 million, 50 million more than what you'd be getting in NIL. And that's probably on the low end with salary continuing to go up. So it's all about getting to those deals sooner. And you might not be, does it make a difference if I get to 50 million a year at, age 23 instead of age 22? Is that a bigger deal? Well, maybe the third contract now comes into play, and that's where things might get a little dicey because you're a little bit older. You want to maximize as much as possible. There is a chance for you to lose a lot of money. So all that to say, no, I don't believe this is real. People have said this before. I get why people are acting that this might be different in the NIL era, but coaches, especially with trying to churn out new talent, they're trying to say, hey, they've already recruited, Cooper Flagg's going to be gone to their small forwards. And so, I don't think it's going to happen. So
It should matter unless you just like know Mr. Beast and are able to take a shot with him bugging the crap out of you, and you can hit a logo shot before Dame Lillard can hit a logo shot. Only unless that could happen every day to you. I think it's going to matter that you get to that contract early.
He is from North Carolina. Don't do it. Don't do it, Cooper. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast. That includes YouTube. There's Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Also find his text information there. Listen to the man on Locked On NBA with Hayes and Matt Moore. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Resistance is futile, Cooper. You will be a Hornet.